Hello everybody, welcome into our latest live video. It's Friday, July 25th, 2025. I'm CareyHolzman, and today we're going to pick up on a part 2 of our video, which is technically part 6. We started this as a budget build and then completely changed nearly every single part except the motherboard to make the opposite of a budget build, pretty high-end build, about as high-end as you can go. So we spent the first 4 parts of this video building and then disassembling what was initially a budget build. And then last Friday, we started the process of starting again. And we got as far as getting the motherboard all prepped up, except for the NVMe drive, which we need to put in today. The power supply needs to go in. All that should be pretty easy. And then this 280 millimeter liquid cooler has to go in. That might take a few minutes. And then beyond that, we're waiting on a USB cable replacement for the LCD screen, but I figured, you know, it's decorative, it's ornamental. We can finish the whole build while we're waiting for a single cable. When I reached out to Thermaltake, who makes the case and the screen, their tech support was very quick to respond. And they confirmed to me that the LCD screen should have come with an angled one of the 2 USB cables on it, one of them should have been angled. So it looks like they've had an updated revision to the screen, and perhaps I got an older one because that's how they used to sell them, was with the 2 straight ends. And then they came out with this case and a couple other things, and for whatever reason, they've done it the right way now by including 1 right angle and 1 straight, and they're connected together. Anyway, their tech support was very good. I opened an RMA request 4 days ago, and I have yet to get any response or acknowledgement of receipt of my request. I last night logged in to say, you know, what's the status? When I originally created the RMA request, it did kick back an email saying that my request was submitted, but I got nothing since then. So it does say in that, you know, as soon as I submit the request, there's an auto kickback to me that it's immediate. It says, your RMA request has been sent. We'll get back to you. Here's a link if you want to check your status. So I click on the link to check my status, and it still says it's waiting for review. 4 days it's been waiting for review. This is unacceptable. So I'm very, very disappointed in Thermaltake's lack of any sense of urgency or importance to an RMA request. So I want to share my experience with you as it is. I have no predefined agenda here. I'm just telling you as it's going down, what's going on, what they've done right, what they need to do better on. And I will open a second RMA request. If Monday comes and goes and I still haven't heard from them, I'm going to let them know. Patiently waiting for a week just to get an answer. And, you know, if the answer is we don't have the part, it'll come back in stock in a few days. I just need some information. Don't leave your customers to their imaginations, whatever you do. Tell them what's going on. Just be honest and upfront, transparent, and set their expectations on when we can expect some movement. But to just ignore me or ghost me, there's no way their RMA department's that busy they couldn't get to my simple request in 4 days. So I'm pretty cheesed off about it. But we don't even need the screen, right? We're going to build this and finish it as much as we can today. And then all the hard work will be done. After that, it's just some cable management and adding a cable to activate the screen, and then the software and configuring of the software for the screen. So that's our plans today, and that's why these are our plans today. I've asked Mara to go ahead and open up our chat room for the public. However, if it does get disrespectful, then it'll be back to members only in our chat. So if you're watching as a live viewer and you'd like to join us in the chat today, this is an invitation-only chat. And the way the invitation works is we're inviting everyone. And if somebody is being disrespectful or inappropriate, then they are uninvited. So that's how the invitation works. And once you're uninvited, there's no invitation back again, other than becoming a member. You can always bail yourself out with membership, because without the members, we don't even have videos to even have anybody watch, let alone participate in chat. It's a shame that, you know, I've had to become a babysitter. It's not a role I've decided to take on, and I'm not being paid to babysit. So please, I'm asking you, be a guest. You're welcome as a guest. Behave as a guest. And or also support us here so we can continue on our mission. All right, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you to our friend Buster. He sent us a couple things in the mail, which I have forgotten to bring out. Thank you to Buster also for his Amazon gift card earlier today at the start of the show. He used to send super chats, and I was mentioning how YouTube takes 30% of all your super chats, and it makes me wait a month to 2 months before they'll pass the money on to me. But with an Amazon gift card, I get 100% of what you give, and I'm going to spend it at Amazon anyway. That's where everything you see on this table came from. All this is from Amazon, and all this was purchased using your generous Amazon gift card contributions. Of course, PayPal is also accepted, as well as super chats. We appreciate any and all contributions so we can avoid having to become beholden to a big corporation to pay the bills. So in that case, you know, once a corporation starts to sponsor us like that, it becomes a channel for commercials or media creation in the sense of commercial media creation. I'd much prefer to do this more as just a regular Joe making videos, telling you about what it's like to be a real life working computer technician and what I'm looking for in parts that I would then sell a customer that I'm held accountable to and represents my integrity and my quality. So if I sell something cheap with a higher profit, then that makes me look like I'm cheap looking to gouge people. Customers aren't stupid. If I sell something overly expensive that a customer could easily get for half the price, that makes me look like I don't give a rat's behind about my customers and I just see them as a way to get myself rich. That's not very sustainable. Customers are going to quickly find out you're way overcharging them. So my goal is to stay in business by getting repeat customers, not having to constantly find new ones. I know that there are people that operate their business with you get what you can, every single drop out of a customer, and then discard them and move on to the next one. I'm tired of working for people like that. Well, yes, some customers, they're only going to, you know, have you service their computer once every great while. You never know how they're talking about you to their friends, to their bosses. I've got many new job opportunities because somebody told their boss about how I fixed their home computer and we should consider this guy for the office. In fact, every single office that I have started that way. It wasn't always that way. I did have some good old-fashioned knock on the door and introduce myself. But sometimes, you know, businesses go a different direction. They get sold off. The people that run the company retire. So what I'm left with today is all basically referral based. I'm not doing any advertising or marketing, and I'm not taking any sponsorships here. As a result, what we've got here is what I believe is the purest form of authentic, genuine reality of what it is I'm looking for when I'm building a computer to keep customers happy, give them a good solid value, and hopefully they'll refer me to people they know instead of talk badly about me. And in that way, I don't have to spend money for marketing and commercials or coupons and things like that. And everything is much more organic and natural. And I don't know anybody who's ever gotten rich doing it this way, but I sleep well at night. So that's why it's right down to my core to who I am. And as long as I'm able to pay the bills and as long as I'm able to do what I enjoy and give people what I feel is a solid value that I would want if I were on the other side of it, if that can help, you know, if that can make ends meet at the end of the month, then I'm going to keep doing it as long as I can. And that's why I do what I do. As a result, I don't have much tolerance for people that, you know, that have never been customers and have anything negative to say. Those people get banned from this channel right away. So if you're thinking of, if someone's watching publicly and they're thinking about saying anything insulting about me, you are going to be immediately banned and no one's ever going to see your comment. That's how we deal with it here. It's a zero tolerance. Now, when somebody's a customer or even a member here and they have a concern, absolutely, we handle that 100%. So there's a difference between being entitled and being deserving. having proper expectations of what you're accepting is very much based on what you're giving. So I don't know why it's necessary for me to say this, but apparently a lot of people were just poorly raised. The best thing I can say. My parents would have kicked my butt if I acted like that. So I guess now I have to be their daddies and mommies and do the job they didn't do, and show them this is how society works. You get what you give in this life. And you know, we have so many great members here and so many generous members. I don't want to not speak about them as well, because without all those people in green in the chat room, these videos you're watching in the last 2 years, they just simply would not be. That's just all it is. Either that or I'd just be making commercials, which I don't want to do. I'd rather just not do it. So we hope you appreciate the free content. We hope that at the very least, you're kind. And at the most, that you support us here and become a regular part of our community, because we have plenty of room for growth in our community. It's probably the largest community of kind, supportive individuals of this size on the internet of any community. And we're doing everything we can to protect that community. If you'd like to be included, all you have to do is be nice. That's it. If you can't do that, bye-bye. All right? So I don't think that's a big request. Shouldn't even have to make that request, but here we are. All right. Let me say hello to everybody. Speaking of our friends here in the community, who's joining us right now? Eddie Casanova says hello. There's David Graham and Michael Lavelle. Thomas MacT says hello. There's Buster saying it is 90. No. It's 61 degrees Fahrenheit in Edinburgh. That's 16.1 degrees Celsius. We have Ben Laird also from Scotland saying hello. Essential Working Too Hard says hello. Richard DeFries joining us along with Ron Barnish. And 3D Everything says hello. Gilberto Colazzo says hello. Also, welcome into... Boy, I think I need my glasses is what I need. Charles Vandola says hello. Patrick T. Andy W6AD. Scott. Our friend Luke Greenia from Vermont says hello. Dazzle555 joining us along with 55 Stang Dude. Elijah 52 Dickens and Ghetto Fortnite saying hello here in the chat room. Brian Madonna joins us. Nicholas Barlow joins us from Delaware. Rick Ash says hello. Dave Stetzel, there he is. Haven't seen Dave in a while. Good to see you, Dave. Doman 2000 says hello. Ken Jung says hello. John Williams and just John also saying hello, along with Matt. Frank Jimmy joining us here in the chat room. Shamim Kashvir is joining us from Sweden, says hello. Dennis KF0RTX joining us, says hello. Dan Nilsson also joining us. Jim Kenny. And Dead Dude says hello. Craig M joining us as well. Well, welcome in everybody. Hope you're all having a great Friday today. And yeah, I'm looking forward to finally being able to start configuring this. So I am anxious to get it done. This project has gone on far longer than I anticipated, having to start over again and do all those returns. But lessons were learned, and we do it all live, unscripted, as always, so you can see where the struggles and frustrations occur when they occur. It's all just not edited out, so everything's always perfect all the time. If I see another video like that, all edited and everything's perfect, I get so angry. I get so angry when I watch it because I feel like I'm being lied to. So if you enjoy being lied to, there's lots of TikTok and YouTube Reels or Facebook Reels and YouTube Shorts where they're all just little 90-second, heavily edited, contrived, controlled content that is designed to be perfect, and the process of making it is what I'm more interested in. There's no way you can show the process of making a 90-second video in 90 seconds. The process of making a 90-minute video takes about 3 hours. Just so you know, on average, 3 hours. So that's why we just do this live, unscripted and unrehearsed. It is what it is. I can't edit it. Well, it's live, obviously. And it's a lot more honest. So I think we need a lot more honesty in this world. There's too much manipulation and too much artificial control. And it misleads people into thinking that's what life is like. Life is messy and life is chaotic. And the importance isn't to show a perfect life. That's all well and good, right? You don't need instructions or help with that. What it is, it's really about showing the unexpected, the challenges, and how we always overcome our unexpected challenges. Never once have we never overcome them. That includes all of us here today, or we wouldn't be here. And this just extends over to building PCs. It doesn't matter. I don't go into this afraid. I don't go into this with what if. I don't care. We're just going to build it. We're going to respond and react according to what develops. We're not trying to make a perfect video. We're not trying to make a commercial. We're trying to share reality with you as though you were working for me and you were in the room with me and you're my assistant, or you're here to be a student, you're here to learn. This is the reality. And I would love to see more videos showing reality. There's a few of them out there that still do it. It'd be great if it were a trend. But on the other hand, the fact that it is not trending, likely, in my opinion, is never going to trend. We're typically moving to the other way, where people don't want to learn anything. They just want to ask their phone how to do it, run through the process blindly, having no idea what they're doing, and then the problem's magically fixed and they get on with life. I wish life were that easy, but not in a career anyway. I can't just have customers call me and do Googling for them. Once they realize they could do that themselves, I'm out of work. So I want to encourage people to use your own brains. It's okay to use Google to look things up, but if you're always just looking for answers and you don't really understand those answers, maybe you should. And now with things like Copilot, you can even ask for an explanation of the answer right to Copilot. It'll explain it to you. And if that's still not a good enough explanation, you can ask Copilot to break it down further. If you put the effort in, the reward is yours and yours alone. All right, so with that being said, let's see what we've got here in the chat room. Ryan Madonna says 90 minutes in 3 hours, 90 seconds, 90 seconds. So a 90-second TikTok video take about 3 hours to edit on average. Maybe if you're really, really good at what you do, if you're making these 90-second videos constantly all the time, you could probably do 4 in a day. Yeah. You could maybe do 4 of those in one day. Maybe 5 if you're really, really good. Like, you know your editing software in and out, and your source material is dead on, doesn't need much correction. Because remember, you still have a lot of other setup to do besides all the editing. There's the text overlays and the uploading and titling and the rendering. It's a lot of work just to make a 90-second, basically, commercial. So. But if I said 90 minutes, I meant to say 90-second video, about 3 hours. Try it. Try it sometime. Let me know how long it takes you. Brian says that sounds painful, making that many videos. Well, some people enjoy it. That's the thing. There are video editors, that's what they do for a living, is they just edit video all day, every day. they seem to enjoy that kind of madness. I've had people that have approached me and wanted to edit my videos, and they thought it sounded like fun. It's not fun to me, but you know, to each their own. And I'm glad there are people who like to do that, because I don't. So I'll let them have that for themselves. There won't be any competition for me. Yeah, all I can tell you is if you're really skeptical or curious, just make one. All right, let me figure out what we want to do here. To kick things off, one of the first things we need to do at this point is put in our NVMe drive. So since we started with this build initially as a budget build, we're upgrading to a high-end build. And we're using this brand Orico because they sent us this NVMe drive. This is the one item we didn't buy. They sent this to us after we'd already done the budget build, right? We already used our own NVMe. And they said, what would you think about using our drive? And I said, well, I don't know. We've looked at Orico NVMe drives before. They were very inexpensive. In fact, our friend Mitch Morrison has one. Got no complaints. It's working just like any other drive. People get caught up in benchmarks on the internet, and it's a sick disease. Too many people, in my opinion, are caught up looking at numbers, and they're not so much as experimenting with hands-on actually using the product in real life, but instead emulating synthetic benchmarks with what the product can do in theory. But very few people on this planet that own a computer with equipment of this high of an end actually utilize more than 20% of it, maybe 40% of it. So anything above that, you reach a point of diminishing returns where you're spending money to look at benchmarks. And I'm not saying you can't do that, but I can't waste my time. And I wouldn't mislead customers and tell them to spend more money so they can have something that appears to be double in speed, but actually doesn't return much. So what does that mean? Every time you double the speed, or you double your RAM, or you double whatever it is you're doubling, so you can double those benchmark numbers, in reality, you're only making differences of milliseconds in most cases. So once you reach a certain point, if you cut something that takes a minute down to 30 seconds, that's a noticeable improvement. If you take something that's 30 seconds and cut it down in half to 15 seconds, somewhat noticeable improvement. If you're already only at 15 seconds and you cut that in half to 7.5 seconds, barely noticeable improvement. If you're at 7.5 seconds and you cut that in half to 3 3/4 seconds, well, good luck trying to figure out if that's any faster. If you're at 3 3/4, you see where I'm going with this, right? Every time you cut it in half, what you get back is less and less and less and less and less. Once you're already at a Gen 3 NVMe, it's already so fast to double that speed to a Gen 4 high-end, which is what this is. Outside of benchmarks, you probably won't notice it beyond maybe 1 second and 2 seconds in a game load, something like that. It'd have to be a pretty intense load for you to see it. You're never going to transfer anything from this or to this at this 7,400 megabytes per second speed, because there's no way to do that externally through the computer or the network. Nothing can keep up with it. So when we double this again to 15,000, yeah, we're spending a lot more, but we're literally getting back milliseconds. And when Gen 6 comes out and it doubles it to 30,000, even less so. So once you reach a certain point, anything that you do above and beyond that is outside of benchmarks in practical use scenarios. And with very few exceptions, there's always exceptions. What you're doing is you're buying into a thought process. You're being brainwashed, essentially, by watching all of these content creators focused on numbers instead of actually using the equipment in a real-life scenario. Like, let's see how long it takes to load Word. Let's do that with a Gen 3 drive. Let's do it with a Gen 4 drive at twice the speed. And let's do it with a Gen 5 drive at twice the speed. Does your Microsoft Word on whatever computer you're using now take a long time to load? What about your internet? Does your internet go any faster? No. Can you type any faster? No. Can you read any faster? No. Whatever you're doing with the computer, are you doing it any faster? Probably not. So there are exceptions, but the exceptions don't make up the bulk of computer owners who are buying this stuff and spending a lot of money because they're caught up in wanting the best, even though they're not even using half of it. Now, that's your money, and if that's what you want to do, feel free to spend your money. But if you're my customer, I'm giving it to you straight, and I'm telling you, you don't need that stuff. We can save you a lot of money, and you won't notice any difference in performance. So some people don't care about the facts. They want more RAM because more RAM always made things faster. Not so much today. They want faster drives. Well, we're not using mechanical drives anymore. So that ship sailed, and any other benefit to future generations of drives at this point is almost unnoticeable, except to very few people with very specialized use case scenarios. They know who they are, and they don't need to take advice from me. But from the rest of you, why are you wasting your money? You realize you're wasting your money, right? So when I tell you about this Orico drive, there's two reasons I want to tell you about it. One is to go above and beyond, people want to buy name brands. So if you buy Samsung, Western Digital, you're going to pay what I call the tax, the brand name tax, which means you're spending even more for it. So I was showing you another manufacturer called Feijing that makes a lot of similar drives with the same components as the big name brands at a fraction of the price. And Orico said, we're making our own stuff. Orico says this is our controller, this is our DRAM, and we can sell it for even less. And it's got the same high speeds. And I'm not sure, I think the warranty is the same, but we'll look at it. And they said, would you be interested in including it on your streamer that I will be using every day, and I will rely on this for me to be able to make videos. This is no joke. If I can't make videos, I'm done for the day, you know, until I get it fixed. So I'm putting my whole YouTube business on the line with this. And the only reason I can do that, sight unseen, never testing it, as I did test the previous Orico models. And I think it's worth the risk, because at this point in electronics development and circuit board manufacturing, it's not as though, I mean, outside of like AliExpress or something, there are some manufacturers out there I wouldn't trust. But we've been familiar enough with Orico over the years that I took them up on their offer. I said, yes, send it along. So what they sent me is a 2 terabyte. They're calling this industrial grade. And there's there goes my power supply. There's a couple other manufacturers out of China that are doing this. Now, everything we have here is made in China regardless, right? iPhones, etc. In fact, I think they're moving their production. But the bottom line is that it's not because something comes from China that makes it bad. They make good stuff and they make bad stuff. And so it goes with every country, United States included, where companies have reputations for, you know, making quality, you're selling at a good value, and having good support if needed. And we're just trying to separate them out because they're all just not all together conspiring. So this model is an IG740PRO. They call this an industry grade, meaning it can take a lot of writes. Let me pull it up here. We've on the screen at Amazon, we have the video notes below this video that have the links for all the product we're using today. And if I come over here to, okay, so we have the Orico source, right, the manufacturer's website, and then we have the Amazon website. So let's start with Orico's page here. And I think you're going to be shocked when you see the price of this. So let me jump over to my window capture. There it is. Okay, so this is the drive we've got. As you can see, for $80, it's, I think this is TLC, isn't it? So this is 1 terabyte for $80, 2 terabytes, $140, 4 terabytes, $249. But here's the thing, you can also get 10% off when you sign up. You know, you saw that pop up when we first got here. And if we look at Amazon's page, right now, this is on a limited time deal at Amazon, 2 terabytes for $112. And not just 2 terabytes, but 2 terabytes that runs at the maximum Gen 4 can allow. You can't really go any faster than this on Generation 4. That's your peak. That's the best you can get. When we're getting mini PCs or laptops that come pre-installed with NVMe drives, we're getting Gen 4 drives that run between 5,000 and 6,000. They're sort of mid-grade. This is the high end. And if we look through some of the, let's see what it says here, some of the photos with write speeds, read speeds, writes up to 6,500. They did all this testing, temperature testing, etc. Yeah, it is TLC RAM, which tends to be faster and more endurance, meaning it'll last longer than QLC, even though that's probably more than anybody's lifetime regardless, but that's important for some people. It has power loss protection. How do they do that? Power loss protection is typically in 110 millimeter length NVMe drives. So this is pretty interesting, especially if you were to suddenly have power cut. It can damage your NVMe drive or corrupt your data. So you're going to watch for power loss protection if that's important for you, and it's usually quite a bit more money for that feature. So this already has a heatsink on it, but we're still going to put another heatsink on it. In other words, we're going to put this back in the motherboard with the motherboard's heatsink, but we're going to leave this one on. So in a way, we're going to have a heatsink on a heatsink, but that should be fine. It shouldn't hurt anything. And then, yeah, I mean, they're saying it's industrial grade. So if we look, the 1 terabyte drive, are you sitting down? It's less than $60 for a Gen 4 1 terabyte drive. And now it's not going to run quite as fast. What about that 4 terabyte? Would you believe you could get a 4 terabyte drive for $216? What is that? $55 a terabyte? I mean, how's that much different from buying 4 1 terabytes? Get 1 4 terabyte, and you can get it for the PlayStation, where the heatsink is already on there, sort of a different heatsink there, and desktop ready heatsink, which is a much larger one, which we don't need because our motherboard already has a heatsink we'll use. And then the DIY heatsink kit. So we'll see which one we've got in the box. I've not used this particular model before. Yeah. And Mara tells me to check my email. All right. I just wanted to see what the warranty was. The 4 terabyte is 1,200 terabytes written. Now, this is not the life of the NVMe drive. I'm so sick and tired of listening to people on YouTube who don't have a clue of understanding. 1,200 terabytes is the amount it's warranted for. You know how a car will say you get a 3-year or 36,000-mile warranty, whichever comes first? Well, this will have the time warranty, how many years, which is what I'm looking for, or how many terabytes. Can you imagine if your car warranty was the same as the lifespan of your car? So it's frustrating. If you watched any sort of YouTube video where somebody said that, oh, I'm looking at the new Ford Mustang and its lifespan is 3 years or 36,000 miles. That's how long it's good for. You'd say, are you that thick? That's the warranty. The car is going to last much, 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 much longer than that. So please be aware, every time you watch a YouTube content creator mistakenly say that this is the life of the drive, feel free to correct them and let them know that's the warranty of the drive. That drive's going to last a lot longer than 1,200 terabytes, statistically, more than likely. And I'm just looking to see if they have the warranty information here, because normally NVMe drives are 5 years. And clearly I'm on the 4 terabyte drive here, but it should all be the same. All of our specifications here. Obviously, the smaller the drive, the lower the terabytes written. That makes sense. Yeah, right here, 5 years or terabytes written, whichever comes first. Just like a car, 3 years or 36,000 miles is a very common warranty here in the United States. That's what this is. I don't know how many times I need to say it. That is your warranty. That is not the expected lifespan. All right, let me jump back over to camera one. You think that bugs me at all? That's misinformation that's being presented as facts from people you're supposed to trust? More and more, you know, the world's becoming more and more untrustworthy within even our own communities as people get scammed, you're being lied to, you're being fed false information. So more and more than ever before, it's important that if something is important to you, do your own research. Even when I'm telling you something, if it's important to you, verify what I'm telling you. And if I'm incorrect, please correct me. But cite, give me a citation. Show me where you're getting your information, because if the source of your correction is not a legitimate site, I'm going to let you know. Because I don't appreciate being corrected from somebody giving me false information because they can't tell real from fake. So when it comes directly from the horse's mouth, you know, if Intel is saying something about Intel, that would be the source, not some other site that's not Intel talking about Intel. Same with Microsoft, same with everything else. We're looking right at Orico's page. We're getting the information directly from the manufacturer, not from some rando on Reddit. Not that there's anything wrong with it, fact check it. Okay, so email. I'm supposed to check my email. Get my glasses. And let's see. Oh, our friend Ben Laird there in Scotland with an Amazon gift card of $10. He says, I hope you enjoy this gift card. A little for the channel. We appreciate every little bit. Thank you, Ben. And Mark Gaines, our friend in Northern Ireland, a very generous Amazon gift card. He said, I hope you enjoy this gift card. Here's a few dollars for the channel. You guys are amazing. Thank you for your support as always. And you know, all that money goes right back into the channel. And again, we wouldn't be here doing this today if it weren't for all of our members and the support of our community. Nothing here is sponsored, but we did, again, we got the Orico drive at no expense, but also under no conditions. My only thing is to be honest. That's it. If I find shortcomings on it, I'm going to tell you. And in fact, Orico wants to know. They're saying, hey, if you have anything, you know, that you think can make this product better, we want to hear it. They don't do that in commercials. They don't do that in paid reviews, which we always called those commercials. They're never paid reviews. Those are two words that don't go together, like jumbo shrimp or a small giant. All right, let's go to close-up camera 2. There's the Orico drive. And how does this open? Oh, that's easy. There's no tape. Appreciate that. Some documentation over here. Empty box. We've got a little M.2 screw included. I'm loving the trend that they're now starting to include the screws, but a lot of times these screws are not compatible with your motherboard. If you're lucky, they are, but don't expect that there's any universal size there. There's about 3 or 4 different sizes that your motherboard may use, and always best use the one that came with your board. Now, if for some reason your board did not include it because you bought it used or from a shady seller, well, I mean, that's maybe you'll get lucky and the included one will fit. But for me, I never use those. So the motherboard always comes with the M.2 screws when you buy it new from a legitimate seller. When you buy it used, you're rolling the dice, and these are other ways that you pay that you may not realize when you think you're getting such a good deal. So there's our packaging. It does look like the heatsink is separated, which is good. So I'm not even going to put this on. We don't need it. I was thinking from the pictures it was already pre-installed, but I guess this is what they mean when they say a DIY heatsink here. So yeah. Now on this motherboard over here, on the back of the board, there is a space for another NVMe drive on the back of the motherboard, which has no heatsink. And this would be ideal for that position, to use that heatsink, because we don't have a lot of space on the back of the board here between the, where is it? Yeah, the board is on the other side of this middle back plate. What do we want to call this? The motherboard tray. And our M.2 is somewhere in here, and you've got about that much space for the height of a heatsink. So that heatsink would be ideal in the rear position here. So if I was installing the NVMe drive on the back of the board, I would be using this heatsink right here. But since we're installing on the front of the board, we already have a big heatsink built in, which is right up here. This right there. That heatsink comes off, and that's much, much bigger, much better heatsink. So I'm going to use the best one I've got. Also, it's going to look better. Since it's gold, it matches our color scheme. So this looks like any other NVMe drive. I'm going to bring it up to the camera here. We'll go back to camera 1. And I'm going to give you a close-up just to show you. It may be an unfamiliar label, but that doesn't mean it's bad. I probably should hold it so that the text is upside up. Still can't hold it. So there's nothing to fear here. It's a great price for a very fast drive. Compare this to the Western Digital SN850X or the Samsung models. Those are great drives too, but you're paying the tax on them for the name brand. So it's really your choice. I want you to be aware that there are no perfect products. There are products that will still break. The question is, how often does it happen and what kind of support will you get? I don't think I've ever seen a bad NVMe drive. And it's so unlikely, you know, it's really hard for me to tell you what Orico's support is like because I've never needed to use it. But if you have an experience and you want to share that for better or for worse, let us know. Oh, that was my motherboard box that dropped, not my power supplies here. So that box that dropped earlier is just a box of parts, so spare parts. Okay, let me figure out how do I want to do this. We had already installed an operating system on here, but because everything's brand new, I don't want to be lazy and clone it. I'm just going to take it out. We're going to wipe that drive and reset it off camera. We're going to start all over again and reinstall Windows 11 again with all our drivers with the new drive. And so I definitely need my glasses for this one. Let me jump over to the chat room so I can see you guys in there. Hey, there's Nick Caffrey saying hello. Hey, Planet Cryos says hello. Nick Caffrey with a €5 super chat says hello. It's time to support the Gatorade drive in Phoenix. Thank you, Nick. And there's more Todd joining us. Mike's Unboxing and Reviews. Welcome in to Mike's Unboxing. You know, Planet Cryos and Mike's Unboxing both have YouTube channels. Mike is pretty regular with his channel based out of the UK. And Planet Cryos, I think his last video was more than a month ago, but he's still doing it, you know, as time permits, and he makes excellent videos. They both do. So be sure and check out their channels if you'd like more content like this. Those are the people, if you want to know who I watch. There's two right there. I also enjoy Doug Betts, live Windows training with Doug Betts. You'll see him every Saturday. And Matt's Computer Repair, or Matt's Computer Service. He's very, very good if you're just really interested in quick diagnostics and repairs. I feel like I'm forgetting somebody. Oh, I am. Ask Your Computer Guy. Scott Merrill. He makes videos about once a week, and his videos are, you know, scripted, edited videos. They're very well done. And we try and bring everybody on so we can talk to them and interview them here and spend some time together. There's a pretty big time difference between us and Mike's Unboxing, or at least that's the excuse he's giving for declining our invites. I'm going to give you a hard time until you come on the show. So hopefully we'll get Mike's time will become available, and we'll bring him on the show as a guest. Very much want to talk to that man face to face, mano a mano. Okay, so there's the NVMe drive right there. So we take that out. What's interesting, even though the heatsink covers it up, is this motherboard has sort of a purple theme. So if you look right there, it's like purple and purple. Weird coincidence. Like I said, it's going to get covered up anyway. It could be neon green for all I care. But I don't see purple ever, and now I've seen it twice. And put our Orico drive in here. And in this case, there is no screw that holds the NVMe drive down separately. The heatsink is what holds the NVMe drive down, which on this motherboard, on any motherboard that does that, I don't like that. But it is what it is. And again, this isn't a part you're normally going to change out unless you're getting something faster or larger in time. It's likely never going to have to get removed because it failed. It does happen, but it's just very, very rare these days. And so the struggle is getting the screws started on the heatsink, because there's really nothing to guide you other than your eyeballs. There's nothing to like lock in. I much prefer the heatsinks like from Asus and a couple other manufacturers where you could just pop them in, pop them out, and they have little levers or clips that hold the drive in place. Without anything holding the drive in place, if you move the heatsink too far forward, the thermal material sticks to the top of the NVMe drive, and then when you move the heatsink, say backwards or forwards, it could take the NVMe drive right out of the socket without you knowing. And then you finally get the holes lined up after struggling, which is what caused the NVMe drive to become disconnected, only to find out it's not working because you unplugged it in the process. So having something individually hold the NVMe drive down makes putting the heatsink on easier. And if the heatsink had any kind of a metal hook on it or something that would hold it in place with one screw at the other end, then it's so much easier. And better yet, if the screw at the other end was just a latch you move back and forth, then you don't even need a screwdriver for any of it. So, you know, you kind of get what you pay for on these motherboards. I did buy this as in a budget motherboard, but this board is one that the ASRock Lightning Wi-Fi that I felt was not only just good as a budget board, but also good as a higher end board. But now I can see where some of the shortcomings are. Again, it's not like you're going to be opening this up and taking it apart that often. It's not like changing out a light bulb every 6 months or anything. So once it's on there, it's probably on there for life for most people. And maybe in the entire life of the computer, if you're an enthusiast, you might swap it out 2 times, tops, if you're like most people. But that's all there is to putting the NVMe drive in. And I will set all this aside. I'm going to just put it over here for now. What else do we have to do next? We have the power supply to put in. That's going to go over on this side. Let's see how I can take that apart. Looks like we have a screw on each side of this, one here and one over on this side here. Let's see what this is like. Definitely want a long, narrow screwdriver to get all the way down in there. Now, in theory, I think this just, yeah, lifts right off like so. So the part here that we're going to screw the back of the power supply to, this is where the points of mounting points are for the screws. That's facing me. It's important to keep my orientation straight so I don't put the power supply on upside down. So the power supply we're using is the GAMEMAX, right? Yeah, GAMEMAX SFX Modular. The reason I bought this is the power supplies that were cheaper than this were also not built to a level that I felt comfortable with, not for a high-end system. We originally started with a company called ES Gaming, I think that's what they were called. Their power supplies did not work. Even the replacement didn't work. The motherboard was shutting off on us while we were installing Windows. So then we went to Apevia. The Apevia power supply worked great, but it wouldn't fit within the original build we were doing. The case was too confined. So I needed a modular power supply. The minute you go to a modular small form factor power supply, you're looking at about $100 and up. We started around $100. So when I saw this one for $80, I said, okay, let's do this one. Remember, I was still doing a budget build at the time. But as the expenses on the budget build were going up and up due to the restrictions on the case, and I decided, to just toss that whole idea away, go high end, I said, I think this is going to be good for high end as well. I hope I'm right. I'm going to be using this every day as our streamer. So we'll find out in real time if we have any failures with either the NVMe drive or the power supply, because that affects my ability to make videos. That's a pretty serious, dire thing, and I'm going to be pretty upset about it. But I have enough confidence in these products that I feel like they're really, the chances of that are so slight. But how I feel and what actually happens are two separate things. So I'm going to use myself as a guinea pig. And if we don't have any problems as I predict, I'll have no hesitation putting components of this nature into my clients' machines that need it for business. And I can do so with the same confidence that I use the name brands. And between just the NVMe drive and the power supply alone, we're saving upwards of around $60 for the equivalent name brand stuff. $50. Let's just call it 50. I was gonna say between 40 and 60. We'll just cut it down the middle, say $50 just on those two parts. And if they run just as fast, provide just as much power and efficiency, why would we spend the extra $50? But if they turn out that they fail for any reason, yeah, I might be a little more hesitant, because the odds of failure on this stuff, if it's well made, should be such a low percentage. It's very unlikely unless of a power spike or an outside influence. But I just want to test that. What I say and what I theorize needs to be proved. Once it's proven and I'm satisfied, I can start adding them to my trusted sources for components that can save my customers money without sacrificing performance, peace of mind, warranty, and that's what I'm out. That's my goal. It's what I'm after today. Carey, have you used the Feijing S880 NVMe before? Yeah, if you search my channel, I've used the Feijing S880 about 30 times. So that should tell you how I feel about it. This is cheaper than the Feijing, the Orico. So Orico, as far as I know, has never released a drive of this performance. And I'm not aware of a drive at this performance that they're promoting with this warranty at this cheap of a price before. It's unprecedented. That's why we're using it today. Paul Vercher joins us and says hello. Welcome into Paul. Martin Postema says hello from the Netherlands. Martin Hogg joins us from Scotland. Okay, power supply time. So I'm trying to do this where you can see it. I have so much on the bench here right now. It's not making my job any easier to crowd myself out, but the whole point of this is to show you. So I'll do what I can here. This is my first time unboxing this particular model. I think I've used GameMax in the past. I don't think I've ever had one fail, but I've only used maybe 2. And neither of them were small form factor. So, but part of my decision when I saw this was easy because I do have some limited experience with this brand. This will be our bag of modular cables in here for the power supply. Power cable, and then of course our modular cables. They also include some screws and zip ties. And then you have this, they call it a tester. This is not a tester. What that actually is for is if you were to have a custom liquid cooler and you needed to prime the pump, you need to get the fluid all flowing. You want to fill on a car engine, for example, you want to put radiator fluid, antifreeze, in the radiator and fill the entire engine block and fill the radiator before you turn the engine on. With a custom liquid cooler, you would want to fill that cooler with liquid all through the lines and the reservoir. And the way you do that is you turn the power supply on just to get the pump moving, so you're not booting up your motherboard and having it run without effective cooling. And that's what this does. It just forces the power supply to an on state. I don't know how this tests anything. It just, I guess it tests if it turns on, but that's not much of a test. Anyway, I don't use those because I don't do open loop coolers, but if you do, if you're wondering, I don't know why it says tester. It's not a tester. Sorry, not my definition. This is simply to jump the power supply into an on position without it being connected to the motherboard, so you can do things like prime your pump. All right? I mean, it makes sense if it applies to you. If it doesn't apply to you, you can chuck it. You'll never need it. And then here is our power supply. Nothing else in the box. Please use only GameMax original cables. This is absolutely critical on every power supply manufacturer. Even though the cables that you buy on Amazon or other places may fit in the back, sorry, this is the back. Even though they may fit, they could be wired differently, and so when you plug it into your board or your drives or whatever you're plugging these cables into, could cause smoke to come out, and you'll just completely fry, potentially not only fry the power supply, but whatever you plugged into it is probably gone beyond repair. It's no joke. Whatever cables that you're not using that are included, hold on to those and only use them with the same make and model of power supply. There's even stories, although I haven't seen it, I am fully aware that companies do change their product from time to time. So even if you bought a GameMax power supply 5 years ago that was modular and you needed more modular cables, you better make sure and double check, therefore, this power supply and not a different model of power supply the same brand makes. So just making sure it's GameMax is likely not good enough, especially as time moves on. They will likely change their design, and when they change it, they'll change the cables. This is true of all power supply manufacturers, Seasonic and Corsair and NZXT, all of them. So make sure you just hold on to the damn cables to begin with, and you're not in that position. Or if you do have to replace cables, be absolutely certain they are compatible with the make and the model. If you're not sure, don't buy it, because the one way you're going to find out is risking permanently damaging whatever you plug it into. And if that's the case, just buy a brand new power supply. Because if the risk is I'm going to damage a $1,000 computer instead of buying another $80 power supply, spend the 80 bucks, you know? It's your money, it's your decision, but I wouldn't do that to a customer to try and save them money. How do you think they're going to feel about me if I'm wrong? They're going to expect me to replace their computer at my expense. So I was so glad I took that job that I made $40 on that's going to cost me $1,000 to fix out of my own pocket. Or I walk away because I'm unprofessional and just leave the customer with a smoking heap of ash. Can't wait to see those reviews. Hey, this is pretty nice. It's got a nice heft. Bring it up to the camera here. I like how the little on-off switch is so teeny tiny. They're usually all like the same on-off switch. Look how teeny tiny that is. Not that we're going to be able to open up the, well, I suppose we could open up the case and switch it, but this is kind of buried in the case. So anyway, the ES gaming power supplies did not have the switch when we reviewed them. What is it with me turning everything upside down today? This is 80 plus gold, by the way, 650 watts. And we have more connectors than we need back here, including the, what is that, ATX 3.0? Can't remember what they call that anymore. So yeah, I'm very happy with this purchase. It's better than I thought it was going to be. Looks fantastic. Looks really well built. It's heavy, so that means it's got good capacitors in there. Big transformer. And usually with this stuff, an indication of quality is usually defined by the weight. I've seen some manufacturers add lead weights to their products. So stupid. And I'm so disappointed when I'm excited this thing feels like it's quality, and then I open it up, you know, find out it's just lead weights they added to simulate. I don't see that much anymore, but I did see it a lot back in the day. Okay, well, I saw it a lot with cheap products. So if we align this end here, then the question is, does the fan go this way or does the fan go that way? So I have to visualize this here for a second. If this bracket goes in here like this, do we want our fan? We probably want our fan facing this edge panel or the side panel because it's vented, because this fan draws air in. And then if we put this way, and our fan is here, it's going to vent air out the bottom of the case. If I turn it around like this, it's going to bring air in from the bottom. We're still venting out the bottom. I suppose there's no wrong way to do this, but what I usually do in situations like this where I'm not quite sure if there's a recommended way, or sometimes they don't even bring it up, like in documentation, is I'll take a look at the marketing photos to see how they photograph the case. So if we pull up the Amazon page for this case, this is the Thermaltake TR100. And I'm looking in the video notes right here, TR100. Then we're going to come over here to our window capture. And let's take a look at the photos. If that is useful. Not sure what all of this white is inside. What is that? I have no idea what that is, but it doesn't look like they're showing us that picture. So we can do like a Google search here. Just type in TR100 Thermaltake. Typing one-handed is always fun. Let's hit the images button and see if they show us. Ah, here's one with a picture of a power supply. Oh, isn't that interesting? It's the same case in a different color, but it does show the power supply in there. So the power supply, yes, as I assumed, you want the fan that's drawing air in closest to the side panel so we can get that nice cool air from outside rather than blowing hot air into the case. Sorry, it wouldn't be blowing hot air into the case. It would be sucking or pulling hot air in from the case. Hot air is going to go out down at the bottom regardless of the orientation of the fan, this way or the opposite way. It's still going to exhaust the air down towards the bottom. So it probably doesn't really make much difference. It's just something that when I don't have a decision to, like, when I have a decision and it seems to me it's 50-50, then what I allow instead of a coin flip is to just see the way the marketing company took the pictures. And that's probably the ideal orientation, even though either one will probably work equally well. So yeah, probably overthinking it. I just want to do it once though. I don't want to have to go, oh, you know what, maybe I should turn it around. Let's just put it in the right way or the way they show. Then it's not my fault if it doesn't work well. All right, so with that decided, everything looks good. Let's go ahead and secure the bracket to the power supply. Now we can use the screws that came with the power supply, which we have right here. And they are the exact same screws that came with the case. They're the right color, everything's the same. It's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Bottom line is you should have 4 extra power supply screws, since it's pretty standard for case manufacturers to include the power supply screws. It's also industry standard for the power supply manufacturers to include the power supply screws. I don't know why they haven't all gotten on the same page with this, but that's the way it's been since the beginning. Far back as I go, it's always been that way. So I realize you probably can't see much with this cooler in the way, but all I'm going to do is attach the bracket. Not a whole lot to see. We go 1 screw in each corner. Should be equal and symmetrical on both sides. Top to bottom, left to right. Same spacing, same distance, all the way across. Now the torque setting on this driver is pretty low, so I do like to, on the power supply, just give it a little bit extra turn there. Just make sure that the vibration of the fan and the movement of the case, since it's a portable case, won't end up backing any of these screws out. We don't want them to ever get loose, whether we're shipping it, we're moving it, or just they weren't tight enough to begin with, that the operation from day to day, eventually the vibration, even if you can't hear it, it's, if you've got a fan, you've got vibration. And over time, if the screws aren't tight, they'll start to back out. That's when it becomes a much louder vibration. And then you're in there trying to fix a problem. So on power supplies, I do like to manually tighten beyond what the screwdriver is set to. Then I'm going to just put that back in its bracket here. Boy, it just kind of sits in there. It doesn't lock in, which I suppose is what the screws are for. But it does help to align it properly. So at least that way we're not going to be struggling with getting the screws aligned with the mounting points. But it would be nice if it was a much more secure sort of a lock-in there. Here's one. There's the other. And once again, I will still use the manual driver because we're still working with the power supply here, just to give those a little bit more of a torque. Not much. It's maybe 1/10 of a turn. I just want them tight. I don't want them so tight that we could end up stripping out the screws, because that would be bad. So we're starting to look like the photo. Remember, I've got the case upside down right now, just so you know. We're looking at the top or the back of the power supply here, which is going to be blowing the air out of the power supply down towards the bottom of the case. I suppose I'll just turn it around now. Everything looks good. We have full access to all of the power cables, so sometimes you need to do that before you install a power supply, depending on what case you're working on and what components you're putting in. With this case, it's real easy. We have this extension cable, and what that does is it pulls normally you plug your power cable directly in the back of your power supply. But if your power supply is mounted to the front of the case, but your power cable goes into the back, the case manufacturers include a built-in extension cable And so we're going to run that however we want to run it, probably towards the back. So that way we're not, on this side, we're going to keep all our cabling as much as possible behind the board. Even though there's no glass here, it is very well vented and you can look right through it. So we want to keep everything as clean as possible. I do wish they had put this on the other side. They're probably worried that it could interfere with the graphics card. I think this would have been better on the opposite side for cable management. But nonetheless, what I need to do is just kind of figure out a route for this that I can get it up under here. Yeah, that ought to be fine. Let's see. All the other umbilicals are already running through the same wire management hole I'm trying to use. And all I'm doing is I'm fishing that through right down here. So that way that cable's running back here. Now this side is well ventilated as well, and you can see through it as well. But usually case panels that you can see through are only going to be on the left side. There's usually not any on the right side. There's usually nothing to see on the right side. This case is a little different because if they're going to have you put your graphics card in like this on a motherboard that's installed like this, either side, without the case window, you'll likely see some RGB shining through. So there's multiple ways you may choose to run your cable management. You may prefer it on the other side. I'm not putting a graphics card in here. I got to put my video capture card in here. So this will traditionally be the side people are not going to be looking at. And so I'm going to just keep doing it the way I always do it for those reasons. Once we have this cable back here, now it's just going to plug into the back of our power supply, right like so. And then we can just pull the slack through. Nice clean install right there. Of course, this is the bottom. Nobody's going to be looking up from the bottom. Now, I'm not worried about the front port umbilicals, nor am I worried yet about hooking up motherboard power. So I'm going to just set this aside for now because it's time for the cooler install. And that's the part that may take a little bit extra time, but it still should be relatively easy. Oh, these are extra parts for the case. This is the power cable for the screen that powers the screen up front. That's the wrong cable. Well, it's not right for this case. And when I mentioned earlier, I've got an open RMA request that they have not responded to, they being Thermaltake. It's 4 days now with no response. But they have acknowledged when I look up the status, they're like, yeah, we got it. Someone will get back with you soon, whatever that means. Imagine telling a customer who's waiting, customer calls and says, when's it going to be ready? And you go, well, I'm waiting on a cable that was sent incorrectly. Oh, when do you expect it? I don't know. Never a good conversation to have with your customer. But this is for us, so at least we're not in that position. Netty Light King Kong says, are you busy replacing Windows 10 computers? No. The Windows 10 computers, if customers, initially I told customers to plan on getting them replaced this summer. And most customers are staying to that plan. So I think we're down to 2 with one client. It's really just a handful that remain. And while we were saying, okay, look, these are computers that have a lot of software that's going to have to be reinstalled, I now have an option if those customers want to take the stress off and postpone. Windows 10 extended security updates are free for another year. And it kind of disappoints me for the sake of business, because now people who might have bought some of my inventory will procrastinate till next year. And any inventory I have today that I still have next year will depreciate in value over that year that the parts just sit. So that kind of bums me out. On the other hand, by simply enabling the extended security updates for free for 1 year is a very easy thing to do. And yeah, if clients want to go that way and it buys them more time, it gets us another, it gets us till October of 2026. It's up to the customer. But all that pressure's off now. All that anxiety people had, what am I going to do when Windows 10 expires in 3 years? And I'm like, don't worry about it. You got 3 years. Ask me in the summer of 25. Well, we're in the summer of 25, and what happened? They extended it another year. So all that fear and panic and anxiety and worry was all for absolutely nothing. So if you want to go down that emotional roller coaster, you'll do so without me. But when it actually becomes an issue, you know, as we get closer, then we'll deal with it. But this is exactly why I wait. I'll tell you something else that happens. People end up, so say 3 years ago when people were asking me about Windows 10 support ending, I'm like, why are we talking about this? Some of those people aren't alive anymore, sadly. Some of those people had their computer die and had to replace it in the last 3 years. Just, it got too expensive to fix it and keep it up, and they've already replaced it. And when they replace it, they already got Windows 11. So all of that anxiety and all of that concern was all for nothing. And for those who are like, okay, I'm still rocking Windows 10 and it's October soon, what am I going to do? You said to ask you when October's approaching. Well, the information has changed. October is no longer the required deadline. With a free 1 year of extended updates, you can go to October of 26 now. What do I do after that? Ask me in the summer of 26. You should be able to predict my answers at this point. Frankie B joining us says hello. Good to see you, Frankie. Eddie Like King Kong mentions he's got a BIOS preventing a Windows 11 update. I've never. I think you misunderstood or miscomprehended what you've read. But if you give us the make and model of the laptop, we can confirm that for you. I think that you either there's an update that needs to be applied, which is possible, but that should have been applied anyway. Like, you shouldn't wait till you need it, in my opinion. But you know, what we see a lot online is a lot of people coming to conclusions without any verification. So if we look up the make and model of your laptop and we look for a bulletin published by the manufacturer, then we can absolutely confirm what you're assuming. I think you're just assuming or miscomprehending the information. And until I see facts instead of conjecture, I remain skeptical that you're correctly understanding the issue. If there is a BIOS limitation, the manufacturer most certainly would have updated that. And of course, you have to apply that yourself in most cases. But to the best of my knowledge, there's no computer that exists on the planet that cannot go from one version of Windows 11 to a different version of Windows 11 simply because of a BIOS. Now, that's not to say it doesn't exist, but that is to say I've never seen that on any computer ever since Windows 11 was created. That's why I think you're most likely mistaken. But if you give us the make and model, we can verify that and we can help you. We're happy to help you and get you set on your way. So unfortunately, there's just a lot of misconstrued information that people come to conclusions. But if you do not tell us the name, the make and model of the laptop so we can confirm it, we're just going to assume you're making things up. I'm just telling you. I'm looking in the chat and I've not seen you name that make or model of laptop, and I assume you're doing that on purpose. So, just so you know. And I expect all of my viewers to remain as skeptical when you hear things that don't sound right. Sometimes people do it with intention, and sometimes they just don't know any better. But I've never, ever heard of such a thing. And so therefore, if what that person says is true, they should have no problem for us to be able to identify, verify rather, that the information is accurate from the manufacturer. There'll be a statement from the manufacturer. Otherwise, they're just making up fish stories. Okay, so let's do our cooler. This is the TH280 version 2, and this is RGB. It matches the matcha green color of the case. And wasn't there something else in matcha green? Oh, I guess the screen is black, but I bought this intentionally for the color matching. Also, so I don't want to worry about fitment issues with regards to the components. By sticking with the same manufacturer, in theory, everything should fit together really well. And the color matching I thought was really neat. I'm not a fan of green, but this doesn't look like green to me. This looks like a green tinted gray. It's almost in the sense that gunmetal is like a shade of gray. This is almost like a gunmetal version of green. I don't know how else to explain it. I like this color, and you don't hear me say that about green very often. Bobby Hurd joins us and says hello. There's more. Oh, I already mentioned more time. Gary Weisenberger said, I would hazard to guess that Microsoft chews 8 years since the release of Intel Gen 8 and most medium version are bang release. No, the reason is a technical limitation that did not exist because the technology hadn't been implemented into CPUs prior to 8th generation Intel chips. They don't just throw a dart at the board and just make up their mind. It's a technical limitation from technology that didn't always exist. It'd be like me telling you that in order for you to put this fuel injector in your car, you need a car that at least was invented or has an engine that was created when fuel injectors were invented. You can't go back in time to a Model T and expect to put fuel injectors on it. It doesn't support that. That's why the limitation exists. The technology is ever evolving so quickly that what we had available on CPUs a few years ago is simply not there anymore. It's been enhanced and upgraded with different instruction sets, security protocols, and optimizations. So you have to keep in mind how fast technology evolves. Just go back and watch one of our build videos from about 13 years ago and look how different chipsets are, CPUs are, look how differently equipped, and then just run a performance test with regards to how things run. Because CPUs have been pretty much locked in around 3 to 4 gigahertz for 15 years now. They're not getting really much faster, but you're getting more cores and you're getting more optimizations and you're getting more instruction sets. And when you have software that's more resource and security resource intensive, you need all of that to function. And if you don't have it, it won't work. So it has nothing to do with time. It has to do with the state of the CPUs and how they were created that long ago that make it impossible for them to run Windows 11 securely. And those workarounds are just extraordinarily foolish. They're unwise, because you're better off with Windows 10 than you are than bypassing the security settings on Windows 11. That will end up making you less secure online. And you, in that case, stay with Windows 10. If you care at all about your identity or ransomware exploits, a lot of people don't care about it till it happens. So at least you can't claim you weren't warned if you do it anyway. I don't have any money to gain or any money to lose. So I'm just telling you as a friend, be prepared for the consequences of the decisions you choose. Too many content creators are steering people down a very dangerous path that will accept no consequences of their own. So somebody tells you you should light yourself on fire. There's really nothing you can do for recourse for the damages it causes. You're on your own to make your own decisions, and you can't blame anybody else for it. So again, proceed with caution and accept responsibility. Gary Weisenberger said, I know the limitations of TPM. No, we're not talking about, no, I'm not talking about TPM. So again, there are a number of items within the CPU. You can use Google if you want to educate yourself on this, but forget TPM, because you could always buy a TPM module. You're way oversimplifying this as a profoundly complex thing. And I don't know why you're hung up on TPM. That seems to be a very common discussion on the internet, but it is not a thorough discussion. There's more to the CPU requirements than TPM. If that's all it was, we could add a TPM module. But TPM is part of the requirement, but not the entire. So just so you know. I mean, believe what you want, okay? I'm just telling you the truth. And I won't get into it during today's video, but there's enough published information. You can ask Copilot. Okay, so this is the rest of the empty box here. That is a hefty cooler. And we have some silica desiccant. Okay, we just had a technical issue that looks like it's been resolved. I apologize for the technical difficulty there, but we got Mara working on that in the background, and hopefully it's permanently resolved, but we are live and we'll find out. I do record the live streams, even though, you know, if we get interrupted online, they're still recorded here locally. I see a couple of people still in the chat room hung up on old information on Windows 10, misinformation regarding the TPM requirement. I'm sorry you guys are being so misled and misdirected by other content. Unfortunately, it's simply what you're saying is out of date and not completely, you have pieces, but you don't have the whole thing. But feel free to open up Copilot or ChatGPT. And I found that that's been very accurate with providing complete information. Whether or not those content creators that are providing you this false information are doing so willfully and knowingly, or they don't know any better themselves, or maybe you didn't hear it or you didn't interpret it correctly. But if it really matters that much to you, I strongly recommend that you research it from a trusted resource so that you know the truth. Everything looks good on this side.
Looks great.
Good.
So.
Okay. All right. So I want everybody in the chat to pay attention to the person that claims their laptop didn't have a BIOS update, who refuses to tell us the make and model of it. There's only one reason people do that. Okay. So I'm just going to call it as I see it. Without volunteering the information that we can verify what you're saying is true, then there's likely a good reason why you won't let us verify what you're saying is true. So I'll let everybody come to their own conclusions on that. But in the meantime, and the reason I'm leaving it, quite honestly, is the internet's full of this nonsense. It's all complete nonsense, and people will stomp their feet and insist they're right. And when you ask them for any sort of citation to confirm it from an official source, they fail to provide it. They'll change the subject. They'll ask you questions. And yeah, just best to keep that in mind. All right. I think, did my chat room reconnect? Let me see. After I lost my internet here, it not only dropped my OBS signal, I think it dropped my chat room. So yeah, it wasn't any of you, that was on us. That's on our side. Looks like we got it corrected. John Lewis says hello from Brazil. Good to see you, John. And Natty Light King Kong says the laptop is an HP Pavilion. You see the vagueness in the answer? Do you see how they're refusing to tell us the precise model number? HP Pavilion has over 100 different models. So if you give us the exact model of HP Pavilion so we can verify what you're saying, otherwise what you're saying is complete nonsense. That's it. You know, if you're 100% confident in what you're saying, I should not have to interrogate you. There's a reason why people withhold information, and it's because if they do so, it exposes the truth. So again, I want everybody in the chat room to witness this. This is very common. And unfortunately, they can continue to insist and bring up other things, anything but answer our question, because in answering our question, we'll probably have some verification of what they're saying. is true. And if it is true, then an explanation is why. So what we end up with are people that misunderstand, and then they want you to misunderstand along with them, and they'll fight to maintain that level of ignorance that I find disgusting behavior. I'm not a fan of people that fight for ignorance. I fight for education, and I fight to make sure that the truth is known and verified. Beyond that, everything else is conjecture and gossip, and there's just too much of it online, unfortunately, that we are required to sort of identify for ourselves fact from fiction. And unless you know somebody is a trusted source of information, and even then, if it seems like they don't have their information correct, it should be easily verifiable. Because like I said, in all my experience, I've never heard of such a thing. And beyond that, there's no benefit for me to argue with somebody. Like, I'm telling you, I'm going to call it as I see it. You might believe it's true, whatever. That may be your coping mechanism, but I think it's a gross misunderstanding. And then extending that to other people and vocally sharing that with other people is effectively a toxic way to poison people's minds. So I want people to be immune from it, and the vaccine is simply to research and look for evidence. David Coopy mentions Dells will update the BIOS via Windows Update. Yes, many laptops do nowadays, but if it's an older laptop, it may not. Buster says he just had to reload his browser because it crashed. Yeah, that's the live chat memory leak that we all love here. Maybe one day Google will fix that. Nick Capri says, do you think it's a deliberate lack of clarity, or is it just a lack of education? Well, I don't know for sure, but what difference does it make? You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't, if you're after the facts, anything but the facts doesn't matter. Opinions don't matter. Whether or not someone's being intentionally manipulative or they're completely unaware because they believe what they believe doesn't change the facts. The facts always remain the same regardless of the reason why somebody would not verify the facts. So any reason why is irrelevant. I don't care. I'm just telling you, facts are facts. You can't change them. You can believe whatever you want. You want to believe the earth is flat, you go right ahead. I believe I'm 10 feet tall. I also believe I'm 4,000 pounds. I'm 10 feet tall and 4,000 pounds, and I'm 2,700 years old. That's what I believe. But that's not what the facts are. All right, let's see what this cooler looks like. I really didn't think I was going to like this green as much as I do. That is a really cool shade of green. And it looks like we have a fill valve, so over time, should the liquid in this enclosed, all-in-one cooler go evaporate and start to, you've got a fill valve here, which is a nice touch. We've got matching fans. These are 140 millimeter fans. Ryan says, thank you for the SSD recommendation today. I searched where I am and their price is very competitive. I added it to my wish list. Yeah, and then we'll see how it does over time with regards to what I think it's going to do is be fantastic and a good value. But rather than assume that, or rather than take anybody's word for it, we're going to rely on this computer. All the components we're picking, this cooler, that drive, the RAM, the motherboard, for our everyday streaming use. And so if I can't stream one day because a component has failed, you better be damn sure you're going to hear me complain about it. And after a period of time, nothing eventful ever happens, which is what I expect. Most of the builds I do never need a repair or an upgrade from the time I build them until they need to be replaced. So that's usually 8 to 12 years. I will likely replace this in a couple of years' time just because, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with the streaming computer we're using now. It's a 7850X3D. It's overkill. However, this is a 9950X3D. It's even more overkill. And, we have the opportunity. Why not seize it? We may not always have these opportunities. And the opportunity is both financial and an opportunity to test a whole different kind of configuration. I'm kind of curious. If, you know, worst case scenario, something happens to it, I guess we'll have some more content to talk about, and my recommendations may change. I might say, hey, you know what, maybe don't use this part or that part. But I wouldn't put it together if I thought that was going to happen. But again, what I think is going to happen versus what actually happens. It's what actually happens that's important. All right, so putting the cooler in. Before, when we last left off, I had this piece off, but since I had to clear the bench, I just secured it back on so I didn't lose the screws. So let me take this back off again, because that was the only modification I made since the previous video. Okay. And then this piece here, this is the bracket we're going to mount the radiator to, and I love how this comes off because it makes the install process so much easier. Now, once again, when we're hooking this up, typically, in my experience, these hoses go closest to the RAM. So in theory, this would go on most of my builds. It would go on like this. So the radiator would be up here, and then this will go here. And I just, you know, I want to look at that marketing photo one more time, just to make sure that for some reason they don't have the hoses coming out towards the back, or that the hoses over here aren't going towards the RAM. I really want to mimic that marketing photo as much as possible. So let me come back over here to the Amazon page. They do show a different orientation, at least on the black case. Show you what I'm seeing here. This is the hoses facing down towards the VRM. Clearly they did that to work around the RAM so that the hoses aren't covering the RAM up, even though there is no side panel here. And boy, that's a big cable mess, isn't it? Let me look back at the, let's go back to this image. Let's see. Back. Did they show it here with the matcha green? Did they run it any differently? So they keep showing us the other side, and then this is an empty case. Boy, these marketing photos are not good because they're not showing us the side I want to see. But you see how you can kind of look through the mesh here? So it's not quite a panel, like a glass panel, but the mesh is so wide you can pretty much look right in there. And I want the cable management to look clean. So let me go forward again under images, and let's see if we have any other pictures of how they've installed the cooler. Now is somebody using a marketing, well, I can't tell. That's a terrible photo. I think they took that with a potato. Let's see, what's this one show? Well, this was showing the case off at CES, I suppose. So you know they're going to have it looking as pretty as possible. Let's see. See that one? Oh, they ran the cables. Again, everybody's running the cables down. But on the black case, it shows the cables running a route around this way. And on this case, the cables are running around and over. But the hoses are coming out towards the front. Okay, I think that's how I was going to put it in, only I was going to have the hoses coming out by the RAM. With these mini ITX boards, though, things get different. So I'm not surprised. I think that's a good orientation. I like that. On the other hand, what I don't like is they've sandwiched the fans up at the top versus putting the fans down below. Wonder why they did that. Take another look. They did it here too. They're putting the fans I see. So you can see the RGB on the fans through the top. Oh, so what that means is we're going to be drawing cool air in from the top. And that's going to pull the air in from the top and then push it out towards the bottom of the case. I see. So the airflow on this could move in either direction. It looks like the airflow is going to be either in through the bottom and out through the top, or in through the top and out through the bottom. Now, since we already know our power supply is ejecting air from the bottom, and we want to see the RGB of the fans, this orientation makes complete sense. I wouldn't even have thought of that. That's why I checked the marketing photos. Because if that's what they're saying is the best way to display this case, then that's how I want to do it. It's beyond cooling. It's going to cool the same regardless, or it'll be negligible as far as any difference in cooling efficiency goes. Yeah, it's pretty consistent. The fans are they're drawing air in from the top. Okay, that's important to know because as we prep this, we want to make sure that we're using the bracket that's included correctly. So instead of attaching the radiator to the bracket and then the fans to the radiator, instead, this actually makes the build a little easier. Just remembering which way this went on, which way is the front. Does it go on either way? It goes on either way. Okay. You notice how we have 3 grooves here and 1 groove on this side. One side is intended to go towards the front. And now, since it goes on either way, maybe it's reversible for a reason. These are little details that that I worry about because, you know, if I go back and look at the original video, part 1 of this, where I took this bracket off, I would pay attention, because I wasn't, to which side of this was the wide side and which side was the narrow side, in order to keep it the way the manufacturer intended. It's possible the manufacturer intended it to go either way, but they still had to pick a way when they shipped it and when they took their marketing photos. And I wonder why they picked that way, you know? So I'd like to keep it the way the manufacturer intended. Normally, on most computers, the wide part goes towards the back of the case, and then the single level here, this row of slots, that would go towards the front side of the case. That's the ordinary, most common, but there's no rule that says they have to do it that way. So if we're going to put it in this orientation, that means if this is the front of the case, right, that's our motherboard, some might argue the other side that shows the video card might be the desired front. When you're facing a typical micro ATX or ATX case with a window, that window is usually on what would be the back side of this board. This motherboard would typically be on the other side. So that's why I'm saying this is a really bizarre, this is stuff I didn't think about when I bought it. I'm like, oh, okay. Many ITX cases often have these kinds of surprises. And so, you know, if I don't know by now, I should know better than to expect the unexpected.
Yeah.
Mara says we've got email. Let's check that real quick. Oh, our friend David Graham sends an Amazon gift card for $10. He said, I just saw the Fantastic Four movie. I loved it. Here is popcorn money. Go see it. I was just talking to Mitch the other night. And he was mentioning wanting to go see that in IMAX. It just doesn't look good to me. I've never seen a Fantastic Four movie that was any good. But you know what? It's just a movie. How bad could it be, right? It's something to do. Maybe we'll check it out. So thanks for letting us know what your thoughts are on it. I've seen enough of Superman to know I'm not spending money in the theater to watch that. And the ones that are coming out of the new Naked Gun movie, I think, is out on the 1st of August. And then Nobody Part 2 comes out August 15th. Those I'm super excited to see. Fantastic Four, yeah, maybe it's a sleeper hit. Maybe it's good. According to you, it is. So I appreciate your feedback, and we'll definitely put that on the maybe list. If we're looking for something to do this weekend, maybe we'll hit the movie theater. Even a bad movie is still a good movie theater experience. You know what I mean? Good to get out of the house, sit in an air-conditioned theater. especially these days they got the auto reclining seats with reserve seats, so we don't deal with looking at people's cell phones or hearing people talk. They've got the volume so loud. It's almost like you're in there alone. I oftentimes will get in the theater a little early and there's very few people in there. And I don't watch people trickling in. I'm focused on the screen. So by the time the credits roll and I get up to leave, I didn't realize the whole theater's filled with people. I really like how they've redone the seating here at our local theaters. So much nicer. All right. So in any event, if we're going to put this bracket on, and if we're having the hoses come out the front, then this would go on this way, like so. And you have to understand why it's important to know which way this bracket goes on. Which I suppose in our scenario, it doesn't matter because we're going to go to the far edge on both sides anyway. This may be more of a concern if you're getting a smaller radiator, right? We're going with the max 280 that the case will hold. So we're going to the far edges of this bracket regardless. So just another thing that kind of, as I'm realizing it, it alleviates any sort of anxiety or concern I had with regards to having to take it back apart and turn it around because I don't like the way it fits or the way it looks. It looks like it'll fit and look exactly the same. So yeah, I think we're going to be okay. But instead of securing the radiator down to the bracket, we'll secure the fans on this side of the bracket, and the screws that hold the fans in will go through this bracket, which is very thin, and into the radiator. So we only need half as many screws. We normally, most of the time, I should say, we'll use four screws per fan to connect to the radiator on one side, and then 8 shallow screws to connect the radiator to the case on the other side. But by sandwiching the bracket between the fans, we only need half as many screws. The same screws that are going to attach the fan to the radiator anyway, the bracket will be between that, and then the other screws will have left over. I'm good with that. Makes the build a lot easier. So initially, if I want to stick to my rule that this is usually going to the back of the case, to me, that is traditionally the back of the case. And I'm just checking to see, this really bothers me that I can put it in either way. Since it can go in either way, there's no harm in me putting it in the opposite way. But I really want that in there the way it came out. So it's completely emotional. There's no logical reason for this. I have a sense of pride about doing it right. And when I define what is right, it's, well, how did I take it out? It should go in exactly the same way I took it out. I don't want to find out the hard way that there was a reason I didn't realize. So I'm going to just take a minute here, and I want to pull up my own video and look at last Friday's video where I'm disassembling, the case, taking all the panels off of it. So hold on just a second while I Google myself. Let's see. So this is last Friday's video. And I can share this with you. Hold on a second. Let's go to window capture here. So this is last Friday. And at some point, I'm going to see the top of this. So this is where the power supply goes, right down here. So it looks like if we're looking at the case dead on, it looks like I put it on backwards. That's what I'm seeing from that picture. Let's see if I get in there a little bit more. This is me struggling with the screen. Yeah, you see how the 3 slots there are on the side with the PCIe slots. Yeah. Okay. Again, this is just mostly an emotional. Like, I want it put back together exactly how I took it apart. That's just the way I am. Especially on something brand new, I don't want to second guess that orientation. So the 3 here are going to go over the 3 here. So with that in mind, when I place this down, knowing this is going to go in, we're going to drop that straight down. That means this is our proper orientation, just the way I'm showing you, with the hoses facing me. It's not the only way it will work. The reason the orientation is important is we have to also figure out which side of the radiator we want these cables to come out at. Because we've got a couple cables here, one for powering the fan and one for the RGB lighting. And as a result, you know, that's 4 wires with the additional ARGB connector to extend and daisy chain. And that can get pretty hairy with regards to wiring. And I generally want the wiring on this side of the case. But this case is 50-50. Like, at the end of the day, you might want all your wiring on the other side to show off your video card. Again, we're not putting a video card in it. So I'm going to stick with my traditional way of shoving all the cables behind the motherboard. This is just a weird case. I don't know what else to say there. Get that out of the way. Take a quick look in the chat room. See if everybody says I'm crazy for caring about this little detail stuff. Ryan says, I understand that feeling, Carey. I totally do. Okay, so it's not just me. Good. Of course, if I have built in this case numerous times, I would know the orientation and I would do them all the same. It's always the first one with an unfamiliar case that I'm trying to understand what it is the manufacturer was going for, not necessarily what I want. Because what I want is what the manufacturer was going for. That's how I based buying the case, was based on the photos. So why would I then build it differently? If the photos were well enough, good enough, that it really compelled me to make that purchase, then if I want to be happy with my build, I want it to look like the photos that I based my purchase on. That's my logic. Michael Lavelle says, don't the fans go under the bracket? Well, I suppose you could do it that way too. Oh, I see what you're saying. If we put the fans on top of the bracket, how are we going to get the top lid back on the case? You know what? You just saved me from having to take it back apart. You're absolutely right. We're still going to use one screw through the fan. So yeah, you're right. If we put the fans on top of this bracket, and this bracket goes back on here like this, we can't get the lid back on. You're absolutely correct. Once again, every time I've ever built in a case that has one of these brackets, it's always sandwiched. This is a mini ITX case. We don't have that much space. You are absolutely 100% correct that this is going to go under the bracket. It's going to go from the bracket through the fan and into the radiator. Thank you. Glad you caught that. Once I got this installed, once I had this built up and I sat it down, I would realize, uh-oh, so you just saved me some work there. That's the kind of stuff I would do off camera. You guys would never see it, and it's not a big deal. So what? I just prefer to do it right the first time. I'd be mad at myself, and I won't let it happen again. And you just prevented that, so thank you. That was Michael Lavelle. Mortant says it's time for Doritos and a Coke. It's always time for Doritos and a Coke. Peter VZ joining us from the Netherlands with a €6 super chat. Thank you, Peter. Just scrolling up through the chat. Dennis Paulson said, the color is growing on me. It almost looks like a military kind of a shade. You know, it's a matte, light greenish gray. Like I said, I didn't expect to like it as much as I do. Planet Cryos with a $5 super chat says, fans on top, also no chance of cables can hit the fan blades, maybe, but also for looks more so. Well, there is that. Nothing some wire ties, not wire ties, cable tie, zip ties, cable ties, can't fix. Barry Klein said, behind every good carry is a Mara. You see that a lot, do you? Jose Lopez joins us and says hello. There's Gary Tatum. Says, jet's such a neat color, not the usual white or black, right? Planet Cryos with a $2 super chat a little earlier says, I'm kind of digging that color. Look at that, it's growing on people. It grew on me. Bob R says, is that matrix green? I think matrix green is a deep, lush, almost neon green. This is not that. This is closer to gray, in my opinion. Gray with a green tint to it is how I would describe it if it were me naming it. I think that catches me up in the chat room. Thanks for the super chats, guys. Frank Jimmy says, homemade chili is for dinner. Well, if I'm not there, you start without me. Not a chili fan. Barry Klein renews his membership, now a member for 38 months. He says, you won't believe this, but by the house I grew up in, it was painted that color of the fan. Here it was called Lynchburg green. Interesting. Frank Jimmy says, it reminds me of the vintage avocado color appliances from the 1970s. It's just not that green. I don't know how it's showing up in camera, but it's closer to gray. When I looked at the appliances from the 1970s, that mustard and avocado color, let me pull up an image. I feel like it's completely different. I don't even think it's similar. But let me just make sure that we're visualizing the same thing in our brains. Let me go over here to video capture. Yeah, that's very green. This is definitely many, many, many shades lighter than that. So that is like an avocado. This is more mint. I suppose if you want to think of it as a mint color. I think the camera's representing the color pretty well based on my preview. It looks, let me go to camera 2 for a close-up. This is the green of a Gatorade. And the yellow of my mouse. That's why it's just got a lot of gray in there. I would call it a green tinted gray. Okay, so we know we're going to go on this direction. I think I want my cables to come out the traditional way down the middle. Although on this case, you know, I'm going to say I'm going to stick with my regular fan orientation. This would be blowing air out, right? Because these are the brackets. So we're going to turn this around like that so that the RGB, which is really displayed here, will be on the top.
You think of all the different ways you can install this fan. We can install it each of the 90 degrees, or we can turn it around and install it each of the 90 degrees. So we have 16 different ways of putting these fans on. And you can go to the other side of the radiator. That then makes it 32 different ways you can put the fans on. And then, depending on the bracket, above the bracket, sandwiched between the bracket, is another 8 ways you can install it, which is another 24 different possibilities. And it can vary from one case to the next and from one personal preference to the next. And that's why I take so long to do this, is I don't want to have to take it apart. I've had to take these apart so many times when I realized I didn't really think it all the way through. I'd rather slow down and do it right the first time than have to disassemble it and repair my oversight. I've learned that, and I've done it enough, right? Where I'd rather just slow way, way down. Yeah. I still might end up taking it apart because, you know, do I want all my fan cables on this side, which is technically the back, but on every case I'm accustomed to, this is the front. At some point, you just got to make a decision and get on with it. So what I'm going to do to make this a little easier is I'm going to drape the pump here over the edge of this countertop, because I have to, it's a lot easier to work on a flat surface. So that'll keep it flat. But the weight of that pump will pull this right off the table. So I'm going to kind of lean into it here. And we'll put that one here with the cables going out that way. And I want these cables next to those cables, so we keep all our cabling together. And that one will go on. Boy, they didn't give us a groove for that, did they? Should be all right, though. And then on top of that, we'll go this piece here. We're getting there. And then in our bag of accessories that came with the water pump or the liquid cooler, we'll have the screws for mounting. So we've got thermal material. These are the screws we need, these very long screws that have a shoulder on them. Let's see if I can go back to camera 2 here. Whoops, camera 2. This bag of screws right here, that's what we need right there. This will go through the bracket, through the fan, and into the radiator. In this bag also contains the really short, shallow screws as well. That's if we're screwing into the radiator directly, which we're not going to do on this case. But in other cases, you just might be. The rest of the bag contains different back plates for different Intel and AMD CPUs. We are running an AMD 9950X3D on this build. This typically is a bracket that goes around the water pump when we're ready to install it, or this one, depending on which CPU we're using. We've got, looks like a fan extension, or this looks like a fan splitter. And this is an ARGB splitter. These standoffs are used for mounting the brackets to which we're going to affix the water pump later. And then these little plastic things, I have no idea what these are for. Completely clueless. This is for mounting the water pump onto the brackets, these screws right here. And then finally, these screws are very similar to these. You're going to use potentially one or the other, depending on what CPU you have. This bag actually does have, some of these bags are labeled. It's so sort of blended in that I didn't even notice there were words on these bags. Okay, this is LGA 2011, that's for Intel, and we're building AMD. This is also Intel, and we're building AMD. This is for AMD right here. And I don't think we need these brackets. These should be for Intel as well, because it looks like this is just going to hook on to the plastic retention clips that I normally have to remove. And I think we left them on, didn't we? Yeah, it's just going to latch on to these retention clips. which is cool. I mean, that's an easy install. So we need this bag. We're going to need one of these brackets. Well, it's got to be this bracket here. This one's got to be for Intel, because that's got the 4 screw points. This one's only got 2. In our AMD socket AM5 with this mounting technique, it's obviously got to be this. I can determine all of this without looking at documentation. This looks like maybe it's for cable management. I have no idea. I'm sure the documentation will explain why we have 4 of these weird little Lego pieces here. Very strange. And they do give you a breakdown of what's in the box, just in case you want to cheat and look at the directions. Oh, those hold the ARGB clips together. I love that. Yes, because ARGB, when you plug it in, nothing holds it together. So finally, they're starting to include some clips that can hold the 2 ends you're connecting inside, and then the cables come out of the slots on the side. That prevents them from just falling apart, just basically separating. Since they don't have any clips, this should have been from day one, as far as I'm concerned. And it looks like they give you one for the fan, one for the block. I'm not sure what the other 2 are for. It's good to have extras, though. I like that I can put this together without documentation, because I've done so many of these. You know, after a while, they should all pretty much follow the same routines, but they don't always. Gotta get out my skizzers. Not a resealable bag. So that means that all these screws we're not going to use on this build, we still want to keep those, because what if you end up moving your parts to another case, or you want to move this cooler to another build? You're going to want all the spare parts, especially if your other build is an Intel. And even though we don't need any of the Intel installation parts today, if we want to continue to use this cooler outside of this case, or if we're changing our motherboard at some point in the future to an Intel, if we throw away those parts, well, we'll be buying a new cooler. So I think right about there, where I'm looking at is where the edge of this is to the bracket and how close we're going to be. I really wish they didn't have that right there, because that's really where I want the screw to be. I'm going to have to more or less make a decision and lock it in. But I know that this has to screw into the top of the case, so I can't have this radiator extending beyond that area on either side. And that's going to put me right to the edge here on this slot right here. That means there's not going to be a lot of room for me to wiggle forward and backward for minor correction and alignment. So we're just going to do our best to presume that's the right place for us to be, I'm guessing. And I'm going to tighten this down by hand, because I don't want to strip out the soft metal that the radiator is made of. What I'm going to do is do each opposite corner of each fan. That way we'll ensure that all the holes are lined up correctly. See, that one's not lining up. There it goes. And we just get them started. And do the same thing over here. Just pick a corner, any corner. Figure out how you have to align this to find the mounting hole in the radiator, which we cannot see since we're on top of it now. That screw is not going in. Don't force it. When you find the mounting point, you'll know. Don't use any force on this. And that one I'm struggling with, so I'm going to just move to an opposite corner here. Usually when you get one corner in, like I felt the screw submerge a bit once I found the mounting hole underneath. Now this limits the movement of the fan with this screw in it. It can't move forward or backward. It can only move side to side, and that means locating the mounting hole should be a lot easier now. Now, when these two are installed correctly, these two are automatically lined up by default because it can't wiggle either way now, except maybe just a little teeny tiny bit, which makes locating the mounting hole a lot easier. Very straightforward. This one, for some reason, the one furthest from me is the one I'm having difficulty with. It does feel like the fan kind of goes over the edge a little bit past the radiator. Yeah, there it is. I just felt it. Now, with all four of these fans installed, or at least I've got the screws started on it, before I take it much further, let's just do a test fit and see if it's going to go in there okay. So if I bring this in here, and then set it down here, something is preventing us from sitting down. Oh, I think I know. It's these wires coming out of the fans. Let's bring these all down. Those have to go in first. Isn't that interesting? At this point, it looks like these hoses are just so rigid. You know, we're hitting this power supply. Remember, we're going to have cables coming out of the back of the power supply. So this is not as easy as I thought it was going to be, or I am doing something wrong. Could be either way. Yeah, you see, I'm really struggling to get the side with the hoses to sit. This doesn't want to go any further down. Try and give you a different angle on this so you can see what I'm seeing here. So what's happening, if you look at the other side, if I can do this without knocking everything off the table, is take a look at this hose right here and the back of the motherboard tray. They're colliding. And you don't want to put too much pressure on that hose. So that would be this side in, and now this side does not want to go any further. So we may need to bring the pump out to the other side, which is quite unusual. But again, this is why I've not put all the screws in the fans yet. But going better this way. No. I really thought this was going to be easier. All while reminding myself, mini ITX cases are very rarely easy. Still have hope. That won't go in that way. I wonder, because I'm sure the marketing photo does have the hoses coming out over here, doesn't it? Oh, look at that. We are still having interference there. Hmm. Hmm. It does seat. Boy, is that a tight fit, though. Let me do this real quick. I need to visualize this without having to hold it down. Wow, that is not good. I don't like that at all. They should have had a cutout in that motherboard tray for these hoses. If this was, look, it's a matcha green cooler designed to go in the matcha green case. So why did they not accommodate for those hoses? Or am I remembering the marketing photo incorrectly and these hoses come out this side instead? But no, I think we're going to run into the same problem. One of the hoses wants to come out one side of the motherboard tray, and the other hose wants to come out the other side. So if these hoses were disconnectable, which they are not, then we could run through this side of the motherboard tray, that side, and then bring one over and have them meet again. Because you cannot disconnect these hoses, what that means is the hose has to be pretty significantly bent. Again, I can't tell how well you can see that. Can I bring the camera too? See if I can move this over so you guys can see what I'm talking about. This cable is so bent. That's what's pushing this up, why I have to put the screws in it. These are not on flexible swivel points, so they just go straight down, and the first couple inches they barely move. So this cable, you see how this one here is coming from the other side of this bracket? If we were able to disconnect these, or if this bracket had a cutout for this to slide into, then it could go straight down the same way this one is. This one's not a problem. This is the one that's all bent up. Maybe you can see it better from the other side. See the curve on that? That doesn't look like much on camera, but I'm telling you, that is pretty severe. That's a lot of pressure that it's putting on this piece right here. It'd be so much easier if it could go straight down and then come through this little hole right here. And all they had to do was cut a groove. If this bracket right here had just a cutout in it, and we could run the hose through there, that would solve this installation issue. But it'll work. It's just, I expected it to fit a lot more like, you know, like a glove than have to force anything. So I think at this point, I want to stop and think about this. I want to make sure I'm not missing anything. It just doesn't feel right. And I would feel a lot better if I could take the tension off of this. The other problem I've got is now I have to figure out how am I supposed to get this block to the other side of the motherboard tray where it needs to go, because the motherboard's in the way. I guess we can take the power supply back out. Or can we? If we take the power supply back out and I run this through, then it's going to potentially have the hoses blocking the ability for me to put the power supply back in. So I think this may be a good place to stop, mainly because we're 2 hours and 20 minutes into today's video. And secondly, I didn't expect this. I didn't see this coming. So I think I need to just research a little bit more before I leave it this way permanently. I want to make sure I've got it right, because it doesn't feel right. Let me go back over to the chat. We'll just say goodbye for now, and then we'll pick it up Sunday. We'll pick this up and continue on with it, because I'd like to get it done. I'd like to start using it. We're this close. But at the same time, I don't want to rush through it. And these kind of things that hold me up, these are the kinds of things that get edited out. A lot of the edited videos you watch take upwards of a week to 3 weeks to film. So you're never seeing anything that's edited live. And depending on how long it takes to edit, publish, could be as little as 1 day, and usually as much as a week or two before you see the product they've been working on. Same with a movie. A movie will be in production for 2 years. But a movie has a lot more post-production with music and special effects and, you know, Foley and all the other stuff they do. This is just the kind of information you don't typically see on most videos. And I just need to verify I'm doing it right. Maybe the motherboard maker didn't intend for me to put that in that way, but I don't know. Not without some research. Marcus says maybe the radiator up and the fans under it. Well, according to the marketing photos, it's very clear that in order to see the RGB on the fans, they've installed it this way. So I don't know if you just joined us, but I didn't just make up putting the fans up there. I'm replicating the marketing photos. And I understand why they did that, because again, they're RGB fans. So you would not be able to see them the other way. I see what you're saying with regards to getting that radiator up further away from the motherboard tray, but I'm trying to duplicate what I'm seeing in the photos, which is what I based my purchase on, saying, hey, that looks good, I'd like to build that. So if I build it in a different way, I'm going to end up with a product that doesn't look the same as the photos. Dennis Paulson says, Sunday at what time? Well, what time do we start normally, Dennis? We start every show for the last 6 years at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. There's very few exceptions to that. So it's pretty safe to assume every live show that I do will start at 1 o'clock regardless of the day. And if there's an exception, we'll certainly let you know. Sometimes things occur that are beyond our control. We have to postpone the show, sometimes by a couple hours and sometimes by a couple days. But 99.5% of all of our shows, they start at 1 o'clock Pacific time, no matter what day of the week we air. So you always know when to check in. And of course, if you turn your, if you're subscribed to us and you turn your notifications on, you should get an alert from us with the scheduled show. Once Mara schedules it, you should be alerted to that. Hey, there's Steve Bass. Steve says, Sunday, I can't wait. Please rush. Keep going as long as it takes. Crack that whip. John Lewis said, a picture I emailed shows the bracket reversed from how you have it. From what I can tell, if we turn the bracket around the other way, it doesn't change anything. And what's the source of your picture? Is it somebody who built it wrong, who took a picture? Or is it a marketing photo from Thermaltake? Because I'm only interested in the marketing photos. I want to see how they did it. Sometimes they Photoshop the heck out of those marketing photos, and it's not possible for you to make it look like that. That's the experience we had with the G.SKILL case before this one. I don't recall Thermaltake ever doing any Photoshop work that I couldn't essentially match what's in the photo. But we did definitely have that with G.SKILL. John Lewis said he's got a marketing photo. Yeah, great. I don't know, did Mara forward that to me? Gotta get my glasses. See what you got. So this marketing photo that John Lewis sends us, the bracket's in exactly the same as I've got it. Oh, I see what you're saying. My bad. So what you're referring to here is this marketing photo shows the these three areas here being over here by the power supply. That doesn't really change anything. You see, the distance between each side is the same, and the distance between the side and the edge of the case is the same. So if you look here at the top of the case, if I go like this, where's my OBS? Here it is. Whether these three lines over here are on this side or that side, the distance of the screws and the fitment is exactly the same. What I'm curious about, so these are the three, see how there's three sets of grooves and only one set of grooves over here. And I've got the one set with one only because I want to put it back together the way I took it apart. And if I look at how I took it apart back at my video, which, did I close it? Oh, let's see. The way this came out of the box, which again may not match the marketing photo. So I'm assuming the marketing photo would have kept it the same. But if we take a look at the original video here, you see the three grooves are over the three PCI slots. And the three grooves here, right? Oh, I guess you can't see me. Hold on, let me go back to, let's go back to camera 1. The three grooves here are exactly the way I took it out of the box. There's the three PCI slots. There's the three grooves. Interesting that the marketing company turned it the other way, but that isn't going to really, you know, looking at it and just visualizing it, the screws are still going to go exactly in the same place. The radiator is going to sit exactly the same way. The hoses are still going to land in the same position. So, well, that's an interesting little photo you found and a great detail that you picked up. That's even more emphasis that apparently it doesn't matter which way you put the bracket in. Now, maybe if the radiator was smaller and now the screw is going to be on the inside, right? And there's going to be a little space between the edge of the radiator and the edge of the case, that might make a difference for cable management. But because we're going to the edges on both sides, the edges are still the edges regardless. So, but yeah, I appreciate you sending that. That's interesting. But it just emphasizes what little importance that actually plays. Interesting. Let's go back over to the live chat. Andy says marketing photos may have no basis in reality. Yeah, as I mentioned, the G.SKILL photos were photoshopped. I've not experienced that with Thermaltake. There could always be a first time. So, and I emphasize this to you guys, when you're trying to solve a computer problem, these days, most of the time the computer problem is caused by the user, not the computer. Most of the repairs I do, the majority, are user-created problems. You know, a customer says, hey, the computer's acting weird, and then we find out they're doing something incorrectly, and we have to retrain the user that the computer's doing everything exactly right. So a lot of times, most of the repairs, I want to say this as many times as I need to, the majority of the repairs I do in 2024 and 2025 are correcting the user. Very little goes wrong with the computers with regards to hardware reliability or crashing that isn't caused by the user needing some training. This isn't meant to insult anybody, it's meant to help you. The first place that I go to look for when I need help is to find out what I'm doing wrong, not to find out what the computer's doing wrong. That is my default even for myself, and I recommend if you want to get to the solution faster, find out what education you're missing. What is it you're misunderstood? I misunderstand things all the time. That's why it's important for me to make these videos so I can now explain it to others like me in a way that's more easily understood. That's my goal. I don't know how successful I am at it, but once I understand it, then I can explain it. And back in the day, it used to be, you know, actual computer issues. Today, not so much. I was just noticing we have a place for a bracket right here. Wouldn't that be cool if we could have mounted this on the side? But I guess that would interfere with putting a graphics card in there. So I'm assuming there's part of this I'm not understanding, that there's nothing wrong with anything. I just have to acclimate myself to whatever the engineers were thinking when they built this, and it's not clear to me. It doesn't feel right to me. It doesn't look right to me. And maybe that's just how it's supposed to go together, but it's so shady, just doesn't feel right. So I'm assuming there's some part of misunderstanding that I have, and I'm going to do a little research on that tonight. So when I come back on Sunday, I will have a definitive answer for you, a definitive conclusion. And it's going to take some time. And like I said, we're already 2.5 hours in today's show. So I'd rather do that while I'm fresh, you know, when I'm not live on camera and I can take my time to really look at some details without worrying about copyright violations and stuff like that. So I know, essentially what I'm trying to tell you is, I know where I should stop. Based on my own self-awareness, I need to stop here because I'm not sure of the path forward, not without research. I was really hoping this would be more intuitive with the cooler and the case manufacturer being the same. You'd think they would fit together with no problem. So either I'm doing something very incorrectly, or that's how they made it. Like, I just need to know for sure before I go any further, because I don't want to have to keep taking it apart. Mark Leibowitz said, I don't know about you, but I sometimes get calls where it turns out the computer's acting normal and it's the client who's acting weird. It does seem like there's certain energy or biorhythms that seem to impact people all on the same day. It's very strange. It's either a weird coincidence, where there's something part of our human awareness that we just can't, we react to it, but we don't sense it. I haven't figured out what that is yet, but it's got to be more than just mere coincidence when everybody you talk to is in a bad mood. And I know it's not me, because I'm like not arguing with them. I'm not criticizing. I'm not complaining when I talk to them. I'm just answering questions, and they just really start going off the deep end. And it's like, well, maybe we just need to revisit this another day. I don't appreciate being beat up on, and I don't think people are aware of it when they're doing it. So I do try to emphasize I'm trying to help them, and that maybe this is not a good time for them. You got to be gentle, because they're really sensitive, and if you say anything that can be misconstrued, they're already on fire, right? So they're going to come at you. And I think the only safe way forward when I talk to customers that are behaving that way is to politely say, let me get back to you, right? Don't imply they're doing anything wrong. Just say, let me look at that later. Leave the computer on. I'll log in remotely. I'm on another call right now. And if it's somebody I personally know as a friend, I'll say, look, it seems like you're a little fired up. Maybe this isn't the best time to talk. It's not very constructive. But it's weird that when that happens, it seems to all happen at the same time, like one call after the other. I don't know what that is, but I think it's more than coincidence. But you're not wrong. Like, absolutely. There's definitely something to that. It only happens maybe 2-3 times a year, so it's not a very frequent thing. But when it happens, it's just weird. Barry Klein said they just had thunderstorms roll through. It went from 90 degrees Fahrenheit down to 78 in 15 minutes. Boy, I wish you could throw some of that over here. Jeez. Charles says you're not holding your mouth, right? Sometimes I do, sure. Takes both hands. Chris at Goblin IT says hello. Welcome in to Chris. John Williams would have a good night and weekend. Thanks to Mara for all the hard work you do. Absolutely a shout out to Mara for all of the work she does with our thumbnails, all the emails she answers and handles from our viewers and also from potential sponsors or companies that want us to review things. Boy, you'd be surprised if you saw what they wanted us to review. All the video notes, all the links, she provides all of that. I think the Orico drive is on a discount. Once we're able to get the cooler up and running, then we can reinstall Windows 11 and we'll test that Orico drive out. So at least now the easy part, we installed it. But I have a high expectations for this Orico drive. I hope there's not more surprises waiting, and I don't expect there to be, but that's why they're called surprises. We'll just have to find out live together. If you want to email us with any questions, or if you're interested in buying anything you see on the channel, we handle all of those business transactions privately for obvious reasons. That's our email address. showcasecreate@gmail.com is how you can reach us. And we love to hear from you guys. Never hesitate to reach out if you want to say hello or share a story or ask a question. We'll do our best to provide an answer. If you don't get a response from us in 24 hours, likely you misspelled our email address. So try again. You'll typically always get a response within 24 hours. If you don't, likely because we didn't get your email. And that's likely because you mistyped it. When I reinstall Windows on this, I don't think I ever activated this. So I will go and get a product key from our friends over at SSD Keys, where I can get discounted Windows 10 and 11 and Microsoft Office product keys. Much, much, much cheaper than Microsoft, but with all the same legitimacy as Dell and HP and everybody else uses, at a fraction of the cost of what Microsoft wants. So when people ask me, like in my business, where do I get my parts? I'm very open and transparent about it. Very few businesses, regardless of what the business is, will tell you their source of distributor, because why would they? You could just cut them out of the mix and go right to the distributor yourself. Sometimes. Some distributors only sell in massive bulk, like let's say a restaurant. You really want to know, where do you guys get your French fries? And they might say, oh, we make them in-house, or we get them from Shamrock Foods. Well, if you want to buy from Shamrock Foods as a food distributor, you better be buying enough to bring a truck over, because otherwise they ain't selling to you. Everything I'm doing in a small business like mine, you could buy from the same place as I do. And most places don't want you to know where that is. They don't want you to know the prices they pay, how much profit they're making, or that you could do it yourself. So I'm a terrible businessman when I give this away. But I feel like doing the right thing is more important than making the most amount of money. So I get my product keys from SSD Keys. I use my coupon code so I can get 30% off, and I pay the exact same amount you pay because I'm giving you the insider information here. SSD Keys doesn't have to offer this to us, and I could go back to taking it private, but as long as you guys are utilizing it, you realize you're buying a legitimate product key with 6 months of support that's real, genuine, authentic, and saves you so much money. I'd feel bad if I took it away. So I don't make a commission off of this. If you buy it or you don't buy it, right? You don't make a commission off of it if I buy it. I don't make a commission off of it if you buy it. I'm trying to save you guys some money. It helps them out, it helps you out, and everybody's happier. It saves me support questions with somebody who buys a product key from some sketchy seller on eBay or Etsy, and you end up with like Windows for workstations that was advertised as Pro, or you end up with something that's got a virus on it, or you end up with a product key that doesn't activate, and then the sellers just ghost you after they take your money. There's so much of that on the internet, but just think of the money you saved. So I don't have time for those games. These are very inexpensive keys, guaranteed. And if you ever run into any problems, your first step is to let them know. They'll make it right. But what if they don't? Well, if they don't, you reach out to me at that email address I just showed you. I guarantee you, I'll make it right. But you must do it in that order. You can't just jump to me. Usually, and I'm going to say it again, when there's a problem, it's the user that's the problem. Not always, but usually. So to make sure that you verify, you talk to the people at SSDKeys. In the unlikely event that you should have a problem, you go to them first. In fact, if you buy anything that doesn't work from anybody, it doesn't work the way you expect it to, you go to the person who took your money first before you come to me. I'm telling you, for customer service reasons. If you buy a printer at Best Buy and that printer doesn't work, you call either the printer manufacturer or you call Best Buy. And if you feel like this shouldn't be this difficult, you put it back in the box and go get your money back. Now, if you're buying something used, well, good luck with that. But you should not have to fix anything that's brand new. So a lot of times what ends up happening, people think things are broken when they simply aren't using them right, such as maybe in this scenario with the cooler, it may be me, and I'm hoping it is me. But I need to verify that. And I'm not going to verify that by asking random strangers. I'm going to go right to the manufacturer and I'm going to ask them. Well, first I'm going to look it up on my own. And if I don't find it like in the documentation, it would be in the documentation for the case, not with the cooler. Look and see if they've detailed this already. It may be in an FAQ. I will make an effort to educate myself. If I can't find the answer, I'm going to email their support. Their support with regards to the screen cable was very quick. It's the RMA side that I'm waiting on a response for 4 days and haven't gotten one. So Thermaltake's been very good on their support. And my browser crashed with that memory leak. Anyway, our super shout out and thank you to SSDKeys for extending this offer to our audience. And all the links for all those products are in the video notes below this video. The links for everything we've purchased, including the drive Orico sent us, those links are also in the video notes below this video. I really thought we were going to get this fired up today, but I also know I'm not going to push myself and I'm not going to rush it when I'm so uncertain. I got a lot of money in this and we already have a streaming computer. This is like something we don't have to have. It's something we want. So that's why I'm going to take my time with it. Now, if I had a paying customer waiting for it, different story. Thank you guys for your super chat contributions and membership renewals, and that includes a thank you to Barry Klein, Peter VZ, our friend Planet Cryos, Nick Caffrey, and for your Amazon gift cards, I want to shout out a thank you for your support and generosity to Mark Gaines, David Graham, Ben Laird, of course, our friend Buster. And it looks like we had a PayPal from, I missed this one earlier, my apologies, from Raymond Hopkirk, who sent $12.96 via PayPal, joining us from the UK. Thank you, Raymond. I'm not sure who you are in the chat, and I'm sorry I just now saw this. It looks like that came in around 2 hours ago. And again, a shout out to our friend Buster, who sent us a couple of gifts, which we'll show you on the next video since I didn't think about it today. In fact, I haven't even unwrapped these latest ones, so I'll share those with you as well. So thank you to Buster, as always. And thanks to each and every one of you for hanging out with us today and sharing this experience with us. We'll be back on Sunday to figure this all out. Well, I'll figure it out and then we'll do it on Sunday. How about that? That sounds better. Until next time, please enjoy the rest of your Friday. Have a great weekend. And I look forward to seeing you all very, very soon. Until next time, bye for now.